So, hello, dear students. Now, today we would be moving ahead and we would be discussing the next chapter of science, that is sorting materials into groups. And this is class 6 science chapter. So, here, first, before starting this, let me differentiate between the material and the object. Means, how to differentiate between the material and the object. Okay, so we can, this is the heading you have to write. So, we can differentiate the materials and the objects in three ways. Okay, the first one is, if I just tell you, materials make the objects, but the objects cannot make the material. Okay, means if any material is there, so you can make object out of that material. Okay, means the object are being made of the materials. Okay, means we are making the object out of the material, but we cannot make the material out of the object. Are you getting this? Yes. So object can be, yeah, materials make the objects, but the objects cannot make the material. That is the first difference that you have to know. Let me write it here. Materials make the objects, but the objects cannot make the material. The objects cannot make the material. So this is the first difference between the object and the material. Okay, like suppose, second thing, like anything that is used to make an object is called a material. Means you are making, suppose, let's say you are making a chair. So this chair would be an object, and this chair is being made out of what? This chair is being made out of this wood. So would be a material. Okay, so wood is a material, and the chair which is being made out of wood would be called an object. Are you getting this? Yeah. So anything that is used to make an object is the material. Anything that is used to make object is the material. For example, you can say wood. So wood is a material because we are making many things out of wood. Okay, like you can say plastic. So plastic would also be a material. Like you can just say this sheet of glass or glass. Okay, like we are making the tumbler, or we are making the flask, or we are making the beaker out of the glass. So this glass would be a material, and the things which are being made out of the glass would be called the objects. Are you getting this? So this is the basic difference between the objects and the materials. Okay, like suppose one more, in one more way we can differentiate between the difference, we can differentiate materials from the objects. Okay, so an object can also be made by more than one material. This also you have to remember. It is not the case that every time if you have an object, it would only be made out of one and only one material. This is not the case. Rather, an object can be made out of one or more materials. Like suppose I'm making some an object here. Like suppose I'm making a bed. Okay, so this bed can be made out of material like wood, and its other stands can be made out of like iron, etc. So means we can make an object out of one or two material, or more than two materials also. It is also the possible. It is also a possibility. Okay, so an object can also be made of by or of more than one material. So that you have to write. An object can be made of one or more material. Means there can be different composition of the materials to make an object. Okay, so this is how you would differentiate between the material and the object. Are you getting this? Good. Now now you have to know how would you sort out the materials into different groups. Okay, means how would you demarcate the different materials. Okay, for demarcating the different materials, for sorting out the different materials into different groups, what you have to know, you have to know the properties of the material. Okay, so by knowing the properties of the material, we can sort out the different materials into different groups. So now we are going to study the properties of the material. Okay, so these properties would help you to differentiate the different materials and the objects which are being made out of those materials. Okay, so let's understand the properties of the material. So note it down if you have noted it. So now write down the properties of material. Properties of material. Write down properties of material. Properties of material. So by knowing the properties of material, you can differentiate, or you can sort out the materials into different groups. Okay, so there are many properties of the material. Like first one is the appearance. First one is appearance. Okay, like with the help of the appearance, you can sort out the different materials. Like some materials are shiny in nature, means they have luster, they are lustrous one. Okay, and some are non-shiny, means non-lustrous, they do not shine. Okay, we call them a non-lustrous lustrous materials. Okay, so this is how we can differentiate between the different materials. Some are shiny in nature and some are not shiny in nature. So this is the appearance. Okay, metals are usually, if you say, if you can see, usually the metal like iron, like copper, these are known as metals. Usually the metals are shiny in nature, they have the luster. And the things which are non-metal, like you have wood, like you have paper, like you have plastic, so these are non-shiny in nature, these are non-lustrous. Okay, so you can say metals are lustrous, metals have luster, and various those the objects which are made out of this plastic or wood are non-lustrous. Okay, so that you have to write first. Metals are shiny in nature. Metals are shiny in nature, and the metal, those are shiny in nature, we call them as the lustrous. Okay, or they have the luster. Okay, so metals are shiny in nature. That is why they are lustrous. They are lustrous. Okay, so metals are lustrous in nature. Okay, and the non-metals are non-lustrous. Okay, and non-metals are, and you can say, and non-metals are non-lustrous in nature. Okay, so non-metal, so we can differentiate between the metal and the non-metal. So metal are different material and non-metals are different, like wood, paper, etc. do not have luster. Okay, they are non-lustrous. Okay, now at the same time, like you have aluminium, like you have iron, like you have copper, so these are lustrous metal. And aluminium, iron, etc. are lustrous. So these are lustrous in nature. Like aluminium, iron, these are lustrous in nature. Like wood, paper, these are the materials which are non-lustrous. And some of the metal, like suppose you have a plate of copper. Okay, and later on, by the time this copper plate gets eroded and becomes blackish like. Okay, so now it is not shiny in nature. Suppose you have a plate of copper, or you have let's study about the copper first. Like suppose you have a plate of copper, and right now it's shiny in nature, it has the luster. okay. But later you can see, later by the time, after, you can say after 2 or 3 years, it gets eroded and becomes blackish in nature. Like you have some pots at your home, also known as the garger like, okay. So these are made up of the copper. So at first they are shiny in nature, okay. But later by the time, due to the reaction with the air, they gets eroded and becomes blackish in nature. So if we have a sandpaper, you must be knowing about the sandpaper, okay. So this sandpaper is used to, if I scrub this plate with the help of this sandpaper, okay. Suppose I have the sandpaper. If I scrub this copper plate with the help of this sandpaper, then again, and I can make it shiny in nature, okay. So the metals which are non-lustrous right now can be made shiny by scrubbing with the help of like sandpaper, okay. Different things we are using to make them shiny in nature, okay. So this is the first property, that is the appearance. So in appearance, some the metals are lustrous in nature, and various the non-metals are non-lustrous in nature. And the second property which you have to know is the hardness, okay. Second property is the hardness. Means hardness, some materials are hard in nature, okay, and some are very soft in nature. Like suppose you have cotton, and you have a glass, okay. Now if you compress the cotton, it is easily it can easily be compressed. You can easily compress the cotton. But at the same time, the glass which you are having in your other hand, if you just try to compress it, you cannot compress it, okay. So this is the difference between the hardness and the softness. So means cotton would be soft, and the glass which is there, that would be hard, okay. You can say some are soft and some are hard in nature. Some materials are soft like cotton, and some are hard like glass. So glass would be a hard material, okay. So this is how you can differentiate. At the same time, some are flexible in nature also, and some are rigid, or you can say the brittle in nature. Like flexible, you are using the tongue at your home, the tongue that you are using to, while your mom is cooking the food, this kind of tongue is being used at home. Like we can, it is flexible in nature, okay. Like suppose another example I just want to tell you. Like suppose you have a scale. This is the scale, and you have two scales, okay. One is made up of metal, okay, like you can say steel, iron, etc., okay. Another one is made up of like you can say it is made up of like plastic, okay. So means you can bend this metal one. This metal one can be bent easily. You can bend it easily, this metal one. But at the same time, if you want to bend this plastic, it would not be possible to bend it easily, okay. Rather, if you just try to bend it, it will just broke into the pieces, okay. So this is the basic difference between the metal and the non-metal, or you can say the metal and the other materials, okay. The things which are made up of metals are flexible in nature. Like suppose we have made scale here with the help of the metal, and I can bend this scale easily. At the same time, the scale which is being made of like plastic, so it would be brittle in nature, or you can say it is rigid in nature, okay. You cannot bend it easily. If you just try to bend this scale, it will just break into pieces, okay. So this is again, you can differentiate between the different materials. Means some materials are flexible in nature, and some are brittle, or you can say rigid in nature, okay. So let me write this here also. Some materials are you can say visible there. Some materials are flexible means which can easily bend, or you can write, I can write it, that can easily bend, okay. So some materials are flexible, like you have metal scale. So metal scale, you can bend it easily. Okay, and some materials are hard, or you can say rigid, or you can say brittle. Some materials are brittle. Brittle means which cannot be bent, which cannot which cannot be bent easily. Okay, means that cannot bend, that cannot bend are called the brittle. Like for example, you have plastic scale. Plastic scale, so you cannot bend this plastic scale easily. If you just try to bend it, it would just broke into different pieces. Okay, so this is how the second property of the material. Now we would be moving ahead towards the third property, that is the solubility. Okay, you might have seen that some of the compounds, like you have sugar, like you have salt, these are easily soluble. Like you have lemon juice, these are easily soluble in water. And some are there, like you have sand, like you have this oil, so like you have chalk powder. So these are some of the compounds that do not dissolve easily in the water. Okay, so some of the materials are soluble in water and some are not soluble in water. Okay, there are some compounds that are soluble, that gets dissolved into water. Okay, so that would be the third one, that is solubility. Right here, the third one property, solubility. So solubility means that can easily be dissolved in different liquids. So I would just be talking about this water here. Okay, so some of the materials right here, some of the materials some of the materials easily dissolve into water. So those are easily gets dissolved into water, are known as what? Water soluble. Hence are water soluble. Water soluble. At the same time, you have some other materials that do not get easily be dissolved into water. Okay, so we call them at non-soluble one. Okay, and like for example, I can just tell you the soluble one. Like you have lemon juice, like you have sugar, like you have salt. So these are the things which gets easily be dissolved into water. Okay, at the same time, you have some other materials like compounds, they do not get easily be dissolved into water. Okay, and there are some compounds that do not dissolve in water. That, for example, you have like here chalk powder, like you have oil, and one more thing, like you have sand. So these are the things, etc. These are the things which do not dissolve in water. Okay, so the things that do not dissolve in water easily are non-soluble, and that dissolve in water easily are soluble in water. Okay, but at the same time, you have different compound that gets dissolved into different liquid. Okay, like you have some compounds that gets dissolved only into oil, or fats, you can say. Okay, and at the same time, you have some other compounds that gets dissolved only into water. Okay, so you have different compounds that gets dissolved into different liquids. Okay, so this also you have to know. There are some compounds that dissolve in different liquids. There are some compounds that gets dissolved into different liquids, liquids. Okay, so means like suppose you have some compounds that get dissolved in water. Okay, at the same time you have some compounds that do not dissolve in water, but they would be dissolving into oil or some other liquids. Okay, so this is how again you can differentiate between you can know about the property of the material. So that was the third one, that is the solubility. Now we would be discussing the next, that is float. Some are floating in water, and some just floating on water, some sink in water. Okay, so that is the fourth one. Now that is the fourth one. Objects may float or sink. Objects may float or sink. There are some objects that float on water and some that sink. Okay, like you have leaf. Okay, so the leaf would be floating on water, and at the same time you have some pebbles like stone. If you just throw it in water, it just sink in water. Okay, so there are some objects that float on water. For example, you have leaf. Okay, at the same time there are some objects that sink in water. There are some objects that sink in water. For example, like you have stone. If you throw a stone in water, it would not be floating on water, rather it gets it sink in water. Okay, so that was the fourth property of the material. Okay, now we would be discussing the fifth and the last one, that is the visibility. Write down the last property of the material, that is visibility. Okay, visibility, that would be the fifth one. Visibility. Okay, visibility means some of the metal, there are some objects through which you can see. Okay, like suppose if I put a glass sheet here, if I put a glass here. Okay, so through this glass I can see clearly. I can see clearly through this. Suppose this is the glass. Okay, and I am here. If I want to look something here, I can see easily to it. Okay, so this is the glass one. Okay, so this would be called the transparent material. This is transparent object. Okay, but at the same time, suppose if I put an aluminium foil here. Suppose I have an aluminium foil here. This is the aluminium foil, and if I just want to look from here, suppose I have my hand here, so I cannot see my hand here. Okay, so the object through which you cannot see, so those objects are called the opaque one. Okay, like at the same time, suppose I have a tracing paper. I have a tracing paper, like suppose this is a tracing paper, so I put a tracing paper before me, and here is my hand. So I would not be able to see my hand clearly, but somehow I can see my hand also, but not clearly. Okay, so the things through which we can see the objects but not clearly, so such objects are called the translucent. Okay, I can make a paper sheet, like suppose this is a sheet of paper. I can make it translucent. Suppose if I drop some oil here, if I drop some oil here. Okay, so this would become now translucent. Okay, this would become somehow translucent. Okay, now suppose you have a piece of paper and you put some oil over it, and now you just put your hand before that, and you can see your hand not clearly, but somehow you can see your hand. So now this object or this paper sheet has become translucent. Okay, so this is how, based on the visibility, you have three types of objects, you can say. Okay, so some are transparent, some are, like suppose, some are transparent in nature, some of the objects are transparent in nature. For example, you have glass. So glass is transparent in nature. Why? Because through glass we can see. Okay, and some of the objects are opaque in nature. Some of the objects are opaque in nature. For example, what could be the example? Like papers, like you have glass, sorry, this one, what can I say, this aluminum sheet you can take here, or paper, aluminum sheet rather, I'm writing here, aluminum sheet. So this would be again an example of opaque object. Opaque object means the object through which you cannot see. Okay. Third one, some of the objects are translucent. Okay. A translucent, some of the objects are translucent. For example, you can just have an example like tracing paper. Tracing paper. So this is the best example here, tracing. One more example, we have talked about this in the previous videos. There you can make a paper sheet, a translucent object by applying oil over it. Okay, it becomes translucent at that time. Okay, you would be able to see through the sheet of paper, not clearly but somehow. Okay, so this is how we have read the properties of the materials, and this is how we are going to conclude this chapter, and in the next video we would be discussing the chapter number 5. So this was all about chapter number 4, that is sorting materials into groups. Here we have discussed what we have discussed. At the first, we have differentiated materials and objects. What is the difference between the materials and the object? Then later on we have read the different properties of the materials. We have read the 5 properties of the material. So this is all about in this chapter. Would be discussing the chapter number 5 in the next video. Till then, stay tuned, keep watching. Thank you, have a good day.